Welcome to the Life in Flow podcast.
The three of us, Yulia, Polina, and Irina, are exploring what life in flow and flow in life is.
Join us as we experiment, test our diverse hypotheses, and have fun in the process.
Will we find an answer?
This isn't just an intellectual discussion. We're co-creating a shared field beyond words. We're attuning to what emerges moment by moment so that the conversation itself becomes a group flow experience.
And we invite you to become an active participant in this experiment. There will be pauses and moments of silence. We leave them on purpose because this is where magic happens.
Go beyond the intellectual information. Listen with your whole body and notice how your somatic experience shifts in the process. Share with us what reveals itself in the space where mind, body, and energy flow together.
Welcome to the new episode of Life in Flow podcast. Here we are again, Yulia, that started our ritual that we are now using to begin our conversations, Polina, and I, Irina, will be steering the flow today. And today we will continue the series of discussions that happen to flow one from the other. It all started in the episode that is called I versus We, Who Wins, where we were exploring possible ideal futures in relationship to the relationship between the collective and the individual. And in that conversation, one of the ideas that emerged was that one of the main principles that we believe that should rule that utopia that we were uncovering is the principle of yes and. And that made me think how the world that turns around the principle of yes and could function, that led me to the doubt that it actually can't function without us from time to time having to say no. And that initiated the series of discussions regarding the convergence. I think we will put the names of all the previous conversations of the previous episodes in the description of this one, so you could follow the string of these episodes. So I wanted to explore initially how we could combine generatively the principle of yes and with the necessity of saying no to certain things, so that our no wouldn't kill all the creativity and all the generativity that the principle of yes and is supposed to nurture. However, the conversations flow as they flow and things emerge. So we started with exploring how we make decisions in general that led us to the question whether we make decisions at all. Hence, we had to discuss the topic of free will and its existence or inexistence. And yet today I want us to go back to my original intention of exploring how to combine the convergence and the divergence so that saying no to things wouldn't kill the creativity of yes and. I want to make a note, first of all, to two of you girls, that in our previous conversations, we didn't come to any definite conclusions regarding whether we are making any decisions at all, where we're making any choices. And we talked a lot about the difference between having the free will and the agency. And we said that having the agency means for us that like we are always navigating the interconnectedness of the world that is, as it was described, as a communion of subjects with their own agencies too. So it's always the co-creation of the different agencies and interdependencies and interconnectedness. And I totally support this view. However, in order for us not to steer away again from the conversation I would like to have, although we will see what emerges, I want us to focus this time specifically on the part where within like this sphere where we do have the agency and we do make choices and we do make decisions, although with total awareness that it's not only totally ours, nothing depends totally on us, and it's all the result of different interdependencies and influences from all other subjects of the world, of our environment, and everything we're connected with. I will just give some examples more from our experiences. For example, when we're discussing some things regarding the project, and Yulia from time to time would say, like, girls, what do you think if we do this or that? Why don't we try this thing? So in this sentence is already implied that we would make certain decision that will influence our action and something will come out of it. Or, for example, when sometimes Polina would say when she wants to propose something, she would say, like, may I ask you to be open to this proposal and just to consider it before saying no. Which means that Polina also expects from us to apply certain behavior and certain attitude that would change something in the expected outcome in the field between us. So what I want to discuss today, I want us to focus on this like part of where we do exercise our agency and we make decisions and make choices. Basically, I want us to discuss how we say no, what is the function of the no, and what better ways of saying no there could be, so that this saying no could be combined generatively with the attitude of yes and, with this like openness towards the divergent and creativity of life. I will say a little bit more later in the conversation when we get specifically to this part of the discussion. But before that, of course, we will start with the game But also, I want us today to say no to the visual part of our perception. I really loved our episodes when we were doing it with the masks on. So I invite us, the three of us, to put our masks on today, and we will do our game with the eyes closed.
It's dark and quiet.
Dark and quiet, yes, because we are waiting for all our members to be ready in this darkness. And it's really very curious how I personally feel the two of you in the space of this darkness around me when we close our eyes and put our mask on. So, are you two ready to begin to play?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So, I want us first to explore creatively just different facets of a word no. Our game will have two parts. And in the first part, I want us just to invite to play with saying no with different intonations. We have done this game several times previously in a little bit different setup, but so it's just let's set up the order. For example, I will start, Yulia will follow, and then Polina will close the circle, and we will do, let's say, 3 rounds to squeeze our creative juices. And the premise is just every time try to say a no with a new intonation, with new intention. You like put in another meaning into this no, or just maybe playing with the sound, with the voice, whatever emerges for you in the moment. Okay, let's start. No.
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 Okay, I don't know how many rounds we did, but it was very curious. I don't know how it was for you. I really felt the different vibrations of the snow expanding in the field. It was very curious to observe.
Yes, there were definitely a variety of vibrations, and also I was observing my system responding differently to the different vibrations.
Yeah, something to think about. Okay, so the different part of the game. You probably are familiar with the game where people, for example, a group of people, I think of a person that everybody knows, and one member of the group doesn't know what is the person the other people are thinking of. And so everyone is describing this person in metaphors, like if this person was an animal, then he or she would be this animal. Or if this person was a flower, it would be this flower, etc. And then the purpose of the game is to divinate, like who is this person everyone is talking about. So I want us to play the same game about the word no. So the premise of the game is that each of us start if the word no would be, and then each would pick a category that whatever would come to her mind. For example, if the word no was a furniture, then it would be that. And the next one would follow. If the word no was an animal, it would be that. And so on. Again, let's
Like
do
what
three.
would that object or what would that object be if it embodied the word no? Is that what you mean?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Or if,
Object or subject?
yes, like it could be. First of all, yes, we're going back to the topic of subjects versus object, and we agreed that everything is a subject with its own agency, but it's a different discussion. So, like, we could say if a word no embodied this category. So, like, if, for example, if a word no was a flower, it would be a cactus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, Yulia continues with the different category, then Polina continues with the different category, etc. And let's do 3 rounds too of this. So, Yulia, you continue.
Okay. If the word no were a bird, it would be a buzzard.
I will need to check out the dictionary afterwards.
In Russian,
Yeah,
it's
what is
well, it's this bird is remarkable in that it is a bird of prey and it preys on dead animals.
Okay. I got the picture.
like a turkey vulture?
Turkey vulture. That's a funny, that's a good question. I don't know.
But
Okay.
it's a prey bird that preys on that. I think it's a good picture
Yeah.
of.
Okay. Mm,
The first thing that comes to your mind.
yeah, but the problem is that a lot of things that first come to my mind, I don't want to say because it could be inflaming in terms of it could be political or it could be this or it could be that. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to bring that energy into this.
This is a very interesting discussion already. We will include it later on in the conversation, but so far, let's go into complete divergence.
Okay. Oh, okay. If the word no was a body of water, it would be a self-cleaning creek that's actually really smelly.
That is very interesting image. Okay. Very interesting. If a word no was a profession, then it would be a security guard.
That's
If
cool.
the word no were a plant, it would be a dandelion. Dandelion that, with its presence, is saying no, no to you, and no to you, and no to you as well, because this is only my space.
Ha! A very interesting comparison. Okay.
Comparison.
Comparison. Yes, thank you.
If the word no was an outfit, it would be a corporate suit.
Okay. If the word no was an animal, it would be a crocodile.
If the word no were a musical instrument, it would be a really big drum, the one that reverberates in the whole system. So, no.
Okay.
If the word no was a shape, it would be an angle.
Just one angle.
Yes, or many. An angle or
Okay.
angular.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much for playing. Let's keep with us the awareness of these, again, different vibrations and different metaphors that hopefully will help us to explore more creatively in the following parts of the conversations, all the functions of a no and how to deal with it. Now, let's tell each other some stories.
Are we keeping the masks on?
Yes, we're keeping the masks on because we said no to the visual for the whole episode.
Oh, okay.
Are you feeling uncomfortable? Do you want to take it off?
No, I just I wanted to also have the visual as we interact with the word no.
No, we are saying no.
Okay.
No, Polina, no.
Okay. So the first question is, what is one of the important no's in your life? Just tell us a story. It could be a no that you received, or it could be a no that you said to something or someone. And why was it important?
Well, I'm gonna start, and I hope the importance comes as I share the story. Because right now it evades me, but there was so many no's that it's just a really good fit. And there was a time in my life, a couple years ago, when I was trying myself as a founder of a startup. And the startup had to do with salespeople actually, trying to help them become more resilient. And in the context of first learning more about salespeople by embodying a salesperson, and secondly, in the context of getting some traction, getting some whatever, customers, demos, and things like that, I started a project of cold calling. Cold calling, you know, oh, sure, yeah. It makes me just really something is shaking inside because it was so abundant in those. And
Something is shaking inside now as you're describing it to us?
as I was recalling this experience because it was really super uncomfortable. And so basically you start your day knowing that today you will hear no, depending on how many calls you're gonna make, whatever, like at least 10 times, maybe more. And so, but that was a lot of engagement with no's, and that project didn't really end with anything meaningful for me. There probably were some learnings that are relevant now, and there are, yeah. But now I'm even like struggling to say, like having heard, having experienced, and having been hit with so many no's, like what did it do to me? I think it um I think it was like so brutal for my system that I had to recover for at least a year. And that makes me wonder how our world is actually founded on no's, not only sales world, but actually most of the professional world, because it's, you know, first you're gonna hear a lot of no's and only then you're gonna hear a yes. And I'm wondering what it does to us and maybe what it does to our relationship with no, that in other contexts is not that bad at all. Yeah.
This is a very curious experience. And because many times we hear similar stories, but with the message that the person normally would say that, yeah, this is how I learned to just to sustain the rejections and don't react on it. So like you get trained to receive a no and don't react, and don't take it personally or whatever. And it's very curious to hear that you had a very different relation to it, because I remember when I was hearing your stories when we were still interacting just on LinkedIn, and you were sharing the stories of this endeavor. Every time when you were telling how you were doing this cold calling, something in me was just shrinking and shuddering, and I was thinking, I don't know how she is doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I was trying to convince myself as I was doing it, because actually what I was in the space of resilience and wanting and hoping that I can teach salespeople to be resilient. Well, like, it sounds so totally stupid now. Anyway, I was delusional back then, saying that those no were not affecting me. I think no's in this context and the number of no's, I don't think human system is designed for that.
Well, I think maybe it also depends on the general like perceptivity and sensitivity of the person. That if you are so attuned to all the interconnectedness and you are attuned to yourself, then yes, you would be much more sensible to this vibration and this quantity, let's say. But other people who are still living in the in this context of like shutting down certain signals from the environment and within themselves, just because like their first priority is to get things done, I guess they really just learn to ignore whatever the vibration of a no might do to the nervous system.
Actually, I think the vibration is still there, and ignoring doesn't make it go away. It's just that you will be processing the aftermath at some point later, and maybe in this accumulated volume that might be much more difficult to process than if you were sensitive to it and were kind of like sorting through this as you go and realizing that now you have crossed a threshold. Now you've exceeded your capacity to hold and process no's.
Cool.
Also,
Please
but
go
also,
ahead.
I think it's important to at least consider that this is from the perspective of, of a female versus I'm not sure if a male receives the vibration of a no the same as a female does, because from the work of Allison, for example, Armstrong, and some other people that I've learned from, the female system receives a no that goes almost to survival level. So it's almost like a no to you, to all of you as a being, rather than just a no to the question you're asking. And so that discernment in our system is hard. Like, I think it takes a lot more to build it up than potentially for our, the male counterpart. So I think that's an important context that maybe we should also add to this discussion.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting perspective. Also something worth exploring and pondering on, because I have come across a lot on this comparison between how men are trained in our society to receive rejection, and how women at the same time are not. But it was always discussed in the terms of really like the social interactions, not in terms of the that our energetic systems might work differently. That basically what people tend to say, that especially in the context of interpersonal relationships, that when a boy starts approaching girls that he thinks he likes, or for whatever reason he approaches this, that in order to establish certain relationship, it is viewed in our society that if a boy gets rejected by a girl, then like it's just a point in favor of a boy that he was brave enough to come up to the girl and that he took the initiative and etc. So it's much easier for them to learn to receive the no and to sustain it without the big damage. Whereas if the girl comes up to the boy and receives the rejection, then there is like a lot of almost like slut shaming that intrinsically falls onto the girl, because like she broke a lot of societal rules, and sort of like this rejection, this no, was the due punishment to her for that. And that is why women are much less trained to sustain the receiving of a no. But the concept that you described, Paulina, I think is very interesting, and it's worth considering and exploring.
Well, we don't know. It's one of those, again, conversations where it's a chicken and egg, because we don't do enough research to really establish what are the biological differences, right? To begin with. And then what you just brought up is the socio-normative differences that are like built into us from the get-go, which of course will also influence how the two different systems respond in a context of a no. But also in terms of like our society, the man is in the role of pursuing, right? And the woman is in the role of being pursued. Usually, that's how I grew up, with that concept and that frame. So if your role is to pursue, that will automatically change the neural wiring for striving and for getting like more no's in that pursuit, right? Yes is no's, but just the that concept of like you're in the role of pursuing, that gives you a different energetic neuromuscular, like neural stance from an early age, versus for the woman, for example, if I am waiting to be pursued, if I'm looking at the world in terms of like, how will this boy like pursue me, or this potential future husband, or even in friendships, if that's your lens that you're looking through, it would really complicate the entry into the corporate world, for example, or just the working world for a woman, because she's hasn't really practiced pursuing, and so now she's being put into a position where she now has to pursue and get into a different like physiological neurological state, which she hasn't really potentially practiced with. And this is, of course, a generalization, because lots of girls will ask a boy they like out, or they will make the first move. We don't hear those aspects as much as we hear the normal, normal in quotes, right? The more accepted version is the guy pursues, the woman is being pursued. But of course, there's other variables that actually occur in nature. But in our society, we're not prepared for what eventually will be. I think that's actually where we're at a disadvantage when we're entering the workforce, because we haven't built up kind of the right musculature, so to speak, for the type of activity that's required when you're in the position of having to pursue something, having to apply for jobs, having to prove yourself to potential, hiring managers, negotiating salaries, like all of these things we are not really brought up to be prepared for as women. Well, again, it's a generalization, but I think a generalization that might be accurate for a lot of us.
Well, I think I agree that like with both parts, with like the situation you describe, and that it's generalization, of course. And going back to the question of receiving a no, and how men and women are able to sustain it differently, I still think, yes, I agree that it's a question of the chicken and the egg. What is coming first? Is it really like that these differences coming that we're trained socially differently, or we're really originally wired differently? And all the rest follows the suit. But anyway, like, thank you very much for bringing up this difference. I think it's a very interesting point. But
let me just
yeah,
make one more comment to this before we move on, because it makes me think about this isn't. I don't think the world had been like that. I don't think the world had ever been about just like no and no and no and no. And because I agree that women probably in the world of no, they do have a disadvantage. What was I trying to say? There was like some really interesting thought. Yeah. So and which turn, complicates their relationship with the no in other contexts, because no, as we're exploring, can be very generative, right? So it's like, it's as if no is yeah, has this it's something has gone toxic, or just because we live in this context. So I'm wondering, like, what for women, like, what are ways of establishing a really good relationship with no's?
Yeah,
so
it's a
you,
really good question. But also it makes me think, sorry, I just wanted to respond that when what you were describing made me think of that when we were hunter-gatherers, a hunter would quite often expect a no as they went out to hunt, because there were way less, let's say, animals or successful kills than a gatherer that knows which field, when the things are blooming and where you can find berries. There's more chances for a gatherer, that they will be coming home with something, because they also can pivot to leaves and flowers, right? So even from that perspective, men originally were kind of trained for the know of nature more than potentially women were as they were gathering.
Yeah.
well, it's an interesting point, although I'm not sure that we can establish this direct relationship that all the hunters were men and all the gatherers were women.
Absolutely. But yes, that's true. And yet, there is some data around that. More data than, let's say, okay, the women that were also hunters. There's less data around that.
Yeah, there were also women hunters, but of course, like, predominantly hunting was men were hunting.
But maybe because it requires more strength, the physical
Right.
strength.
Well, so that already automatically points to a biological difference. And if there's a biological difference, quite likely there's also a neurological difference, right? So, and then on top of it, if we were evolving from hunter-gatherers, and men were going out to hunt and were already prepared for failure, right? They would have to have a different relationship with a failed hunt for them to continue to be motivated to continue to go out there and hunt. So they would have to have build a different relationship with the no from nature.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting point. Okay, so we'll keep it also in mind, but I want to go back to what Yulia said, because she actually brought 2 points from what I've heard. That first, she said that we didn't live always in the world that had so many no's, that like we didn't have to sustain so many no's before. So when do you think it started? Like, is it the question of the industrial revolution, then that with the increase of the speed of growth and the speed of life, we're just bombarded with much more options and much more information, and hence this density of no also increases? Or do you think it's other things?
Yeah, I mean, because if I were to um, just maybe single out one thing, yeah, we live in the world which is totally run by money and by a financial system. And of course, where money is, I think there has to be a lot of protection, be it at an individual level or at corporate level or, like certain group level. And so I think maybe having a financial system, even one of the things is that it's supposed to be, like a fractured society where the money or resources are always protected by saying other people no. I mean, yeah.
Interesting.
We're moving away from our topic. Feeling.
Well, it's no, I would say we're opening up the new sides of the topic that I didn't even think of when I was thinking of our conversation, when I was planning it. But that's the point of all our conversations, that they flow in unexpected ways.
And this does mirror what we already talked about in one of the other episodes, that whenever you're saying yes, you're also saying no to something else, especially when there's so many more yeses these days, right? To be had, you automatically will have, I think Yulia, you described it as FOMO, right? Fear of missing out.
Yeah.
The more yeses there are available, also ultimately the more no's are necessary, even if they're not chosen no's, but like automatic no's because of the yes.
Yeah, but that's exactly the reason why I want to have this conversation, because in theory, the principle of yes and implies that we don't, by saying yes, we don't say no to other things. We're saying yes and. And yet, the no's seem to me necessaries. But that brings me to the second point that Yulia mentions, that it's sort of this increased density of no's, also the no's of certain vibrations that missing out all other like tones and aspects of a no that could have totally different functions. And this is exactly what I think would be interesting to explore. What are all the different functions of a no and how we could deal with a no maybe more generatively. But okay, let's follow the circle. Polina, what would be your story of an important no?
No. Um, I wish a specific story came to mind, but it's more like a full lifetime of a compilation of no's. Um, I think the specific aspect of the compiled no's that I will bring into the space today is my relationship with the automatic no that came from my primary caregivers, my partners, like almost maybe it was some sort of a pattern in our lineage and in some of the people that I chose to date that whenever there was an ask, whenever there was excitement, whenever there was something that came up, the automatic response, first response is no. And it's something that I've really disliked and have been confused by and have been really frustrated by, and didn't quite know how to place it until I became a coach and discovered the world of yes and. And
So, yeah, sorry, please go on.
well, so that's my story. It's the frustration of certain systems are wired to shut things down as a first defensive response, no matter what it is. And growing up in that kind of model was not generative. It was very, it felt negative and heavy and divergent, right? And it would cause a lot of unnecessary conflict, unnecessary loss of connection, unnecessary loss of discussion and like co-creation, engagement. So that's my story. I know it's not a specific story, but that's what I got.
No, well, but I think it's specific enough. But um, I have a clarifying question. So this frustration that you describe, do you think it's frustration of this, like similar to what Yulia described, that like the nervous system that feels too like bombarded by this vibration of no, that it's not generative, or it's frustration of like closed options that you were not allowed to open up and to explore?
Closed options, but I would even say specifically closed opportunities for getting to understand more, whether it was the topic or the lack of resources, or where does the person stand on this? Like, why is it a no? So it was a lack of the ability to go like engage with the no, right? So the no was used as I'm just not going to deal with this, rather than, well, it's a no, and here's why, and let's tend to this no in your system, or let's tend to this situation, and meaning it was just a closed door to exploration, to getting to know it, to like processing it, to connection to various things. I guess that is how I would say it. Meaning to
And
get a no without the ability to understand why it's a no, it's also the loss of, the opportunity to grow and get to know things better and to understand people better. And that was what I wanted more than a yes or a no. I wanted more access to what's behind the scenes.
As you describe it, like the sensation that I get in my body and even more like around my body, it's like this feeling of enclosement, as if like I'm being locked in a cage. I don't know if it
Actually,
resonates anyhow.
yes, but not locked in a cage, locked out.
Locked out, okay.
Locked out. Like that was the recurring sense that I'm just being locked out of like all these things that could actually be engaged with, and I'm just not going to be allowed in.
Like a lot of
Okay.
dead ends.
Yeah.
Like
Like
no.
all the doors are closed.
Yeah.
Nope. The door of family members engaging closed. Yeah. So basically I'm wandering the world with all these closed doors surrounding me.
Mm.
So I'm the one who's locked out.
I'm curious, Pauline, what does what how did it impact your relationship with no's? Because what you were sharing, it actually reminded me also of my family experience and my dad,
Mm.
whose tolerance has been like so extremely low for any difficult conversations or difficult situations or intense emotions. And so that has been such a huge factor in my life for a long, long time, and probably till now. But for me, um, like I learned to be afraid of the intensity and of difficult conversations. And I think for you it's different. That's why I'm even like asking. I'm very curious what it did to you.
That's very on point, Yulia. It's true, it is different. I mean, I did it there were two things that happened because of that recurring experience. One of the things was that I really started doubting and questioning myself and judging myself and blaming myself. Like there was a lot of internal attack in terms of like what's wrong with me, and feeling like I just don't belong or clearly something is wrong with me because of this response from the world. But also it at the same time amplified that this is who I am. Like, I'm a person that wants to engage and wants to ask deep questions and wants to have deep relationships. And I'm not a person that wants to have surface conversations and surface relationships. So, it created a lot of angst, of course, with my primary, you know, the nuclear family. A lot of angst and mm, anger and negativity and opposition. Um, and yet I continued to make invitations to have conversations and to get to understanding. Um, and it did drive me, to get my master's in psychology and to get, several coaching certifications because that's how I want to operate in the world and that's what I want to experience. So I figured out a different way to express myself from what I think is a natural ability and gift and desire. It's, something that makes it worthwhile to be here for me. Um, but it was such a core thing about who I am, which is, I think, otherwise, if it wasn't such a core thing, I think I would have just stopped asking questions. Stopped wanting to get deeper. Does that
So
answer the
it's
question?
always
Mm-hmm.
it gives me like what comes to my mind that this experience, instead of making you run away from the no, it made you like to look for the ways around the no.
Yes. What are ways of helping someone um regulate their nervous system or yeah, like circumvent the automatic autopilot response, and how do we get to other aspects of you that are also in there. uh but if you're living from the no, then we can't engage with the rest of what's actually in there. Now, none of that actually works with my nuclear family. So to this day, it's still a world of no's and closed doors. But and actually, it's still quite frustrating that that's the case. Um, and it is a big loss. So I know we're talking about the experience with no specifically. So I didn't feel like giving up for a really, really long time. So all the no's I received, I was like, well, I'm gonna figure out a different way around this. No, you're right. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah,
not I'm not
this,
gonna take this no. You're right. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
and this is what I find curious because like I think I personally run or I learn very fast of like running away from the situations where I might receive a no. So like I find it actually admirable this persistence or okay, no, I will find a way around this no. It's it's cool.
And this is, I guess it's yeah, this is where it's a generative aspect of a no, the way Paulina has been engaging with it, right? So, it's something is blocked and that makes you be really creative by finding ways around it. And, even without mentioning whether you succeeded the way that you wanted. The thing is that I think in hindsight, it's created a lot, the no in your life.
That's true. That's true. I mean, but it also sent me down some side paths of having to dig deep and understand whether like the things I want to know or what I'm asking, are they not okay? Is it really inappropriate? Like, my dad to his dying day, on the last day of his life, managed to still tell me, Paulina, why do you ask such inappropriate, like not inappropriate. He said, why do you ask such, what is wrong with you? Why do you ask such personal questions? And what he was referring to was me asking about my grandparents because I had a sense that I didn't know if I was going to see him again in this lifetime, and he wasn't doing well, and I was hoping to hear at least some stories, maybe towards the end of his life, about my grandparents, so I could have a little bit of a sense of him, of them, before he left. And me asking about my grandparents, elicited this response of him trying to shame me for what is wrong with me, that I ask all these personal questions. And it was so funny that we started that way. I mean, I'm saying it's funny now to me because I see it from a more zoomed out perspective. It was quite upsetting in the moment, but it's funny that we sort of started this way with this dynamic where he just wanted it all to be a no, and I just wanted to get more information, more access, and then we ended on that same note. What is wrong with you? Why do you ask such personal questions? Um, so it was a little bit of a coming full circle, I guess, in a way. But but by the time he gave me this last message, I already did so much work of not having his no um reverberate through my system as if that no is like true to me. So there was enough separation that it was just like, okay, well, you wanted to be unreachable in this lifetime, and you are leaving this lifetime being an unreachable person, trying to shame me along the way. Why am I saying this? So, I mean, it was like getting an ultimate no at the end, you know? But I say yes to me. So that's the difference. So the reason why I can engage with his no now is because I have a resounding yes to me, regardless of who thinks what about me.
That is very beautiful.
I think it might go, well, for me, it goes, Pauline, I very much resonate with that. And for me, it goes to the last episode that we recorded about belonging.
Mm-hmm.
In that, like finding something bigger, the bigger context where I'm so legitimate, I so belong, and that big context and the energetic that it's kind of like providing and the way that it holds me, it can override the human knows, any human know probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true actually. Yeah, that episode about belonging was exactly about overcoming a no, sort of like the constant no, of at least the sensation of this no from the world.
Yeah, that's true. And it really isn't, funny enough, it's not about receiving yeses from the world. It's actually just receiving a yes from yourself to yourself.
Exactly, exactly.
So
Yes.
it's very different than the way like we were taught what nos and yeses are meant to be in our lives, you know?
Well, I would say for me, I do receive a yes, just not necessarily from the human world. It's that the human world loses its grip. And,
Mm.
I stop totally depending on the human world and how I belong with this life.
Yeah, I love that.
What's your story?
Yeah, I was coming to that. So we have a no as a sort of vibration that creates really quite a like negative impact on the nervous system. We have a no as closing doors that yet incites this journey of creative exploration of how I overcome these obstacles and I still find my ways to the yeses, to open these possibilities or other possibilities, to open the exploration of all the possibilities that could exist for me. And I did love this thought of that, like in order to overcome a no that you receive from outside, you just need to say yes to yourself.
Mhm.
And I think I will confess I had this story prepared. Let's say just every time when I was thinking, okay, what is the first story that comes to my mind if I like think about an important no in my life. This was the story that was coming to my mind, although it doesn't sound really as a very like big story. And yet somehow apparently it stuck in my memory, the experience itself. And it does bring a new aspect of a no to the conversation. So when I was preparing for the entrance exam to the university, I was going to apply in one Moscow University for the department of the. I wanted to study applied linguistics, and so they had a certain set of exams that I had to pass, and for the last year of the school, all that I was doing, I was preparing for those exams, and I was studying like crazy. Because for me, it was just unthinkable not to pass those exams, because what other people would think of me, that I'm not that great as everybody was thinking I am. But at the same time, for me also was totally unthinkable that I could pass those exams, because just it was the absolutely different level of the knowledge that we were getting from school. And so basically the subjects that I was studying was history and mathematics. But then at a certain point, I thought that, yeah, why don't I apply to applied linguistics to the Moscow State University? It's much cooler. This is much greater, the university, than the one that I was going to. And the problem was that there I was supposed to take also the exam in English, and I was not very good in English at that time. So I also started taking English classes. And at a certain point, I was so exhausted, and I realized that I just really, I was not making it. I just didn't have enough time to study everything. And I started questioning whether I should give up something. And the most obvious choice was to give up studying English, and hence to give up the possibility of applying to the Moscow State University to applied linguistics. And for some time, for several weeks, I was going, debating this decision whether I just need to study harder and work harder and to do all of it, or give up. And I remember the moment when I finally said to myself, okay, I give up studying English, and hence I give up the possibility of going to the applied linguistics in Moscow State University. And at that moment, I felt, when I said no to this possibility, I felt such a relief, that such a huge weight fell off my shoulders, that probably that's why it got imprinted in me for my whole life, this sensation that sometimes making a decision to say no to something can be a huge relief, just because you make a decision and you close the door and you stop thinking about it. It stops being a possibility, and it opens up a space for you, to focus on other things that feel more available to you at this moment.
Yeah, totally. I feel you're saying, and say no to some things that in the moment it's as if you are holding on to these things or clinging to these things because they seem important. And then sometimes what you're describing feels to me like it's almost was had to be forced, this separation, this saying no. And then when it is there, the separation and the no, the relief and the space that it creates, it's just so expansive. And I felt this way also a few times with that startup project. When they said no, it was hard, and it was, a lot of it was driven by, oh, what are the people going to say about me and blah, 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 blah. Well, it was a lot of, it was, not an easy thing to do. And then, wow, how freeing it felt to say no. I mean, no has freedom in it, right?
Yes, this is exactly what I wanted to discuss. Paulina, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I
No?
wanted to also just reflect to you that when you were telling your story and the relief you felt with when you said no, it also to me sounded like, and I felt it in my system, that arc when you went from potentially having to choose this thing and then when you said no, the relief, I felt it with you, and I'm wondering if also it was you like already future gauging how much resources and energy and you was going to be required for this thing if you actually went through with it, right? And potentially like not an inflow type of experience that on some level you were already feeling like it was going to take so much of like actual effort. So like a push, and then so when you said no, you're able to collect back all of that energy and all of that effort that you were already, your system was already prepping for and imagining and kind of feeling out in the ethers, if you were to pursue this. So that's what it sounded like to me, and I had like a physical experience of that as you were describing it. Is that accurate at all, or?
I'm not sure that I was that advanced at that moment to be able to discern all these that you described. But there was definitely, for me, there is certain like the aspect of returning your energy that were allocated, dedicated to that option, like to that path. And then you feel that this path is unsustainable. You get back these resources, and
Yeah.
it's the relief because you made the decision, so you don't have this weight of like I have to decide. Whatever I decide, I decided. And then yes, you close the option. It's not an option anymore. So you have fewer options to deal with. And it's also relief. It's always almost like, I think I shared this experience with you once. I'm not sure if it was in one of the episodes. So like for me, one of the most frustrating experiences in life was visiting a supermarket in US. When you stand in front of like 2 kilometers of shelves full of yogurt, and you're thinking, for God's sake, how am I supposed to choose? I'm going to spend 2 hours here choosing a yogurt. Seriously? So like when you are given only two choices, it's much easier. Actually, I think they have a scientific term for this, that like too much choice creates too much anxiety or something like this.
Fatigue or like whatever.
Yeah.
Kind
choice
of fatigue.
fatigue. That's true. That's true. So, as it usually happens, our conversation, of course, went not the way that I had planned and expected, and we obviously don't have time to discuss the main question yet again. But we really like some very interesting things emerged here, and for the like closure, I want us to say yes again to things and to take off our masks. And after exploring all these different ways of closing options and how it feels, I want us to explore, again, go back to divergency and explore the all other different aspects of a no in the terms of, so like, let's name all or explore or whatever, okay, like all different functions of a no. What functions can a no can play in life? So we mentioned the closing the paths, but also like clearing the energy, like cutting off the options to clear up the energy, the resources, and what you can focus on.
I would also frame it as taking all the no's and all the closed doors and saying, I will find a yes to me no matter what.
It's like a challenge, an invitation to explore, to deal with it creatively. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say no also has this refusing claims on you, like protecting you from claims of others and maybe even of yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like there is the protection sense in it.
There's just yeses take up a lot of space, physical, emotional, all kinds of space. And when you say yes, that the claims that have been made on that space, they're gone. And so you have more space and maybe you have more of yourself.
That
More of
is
yourself
why,
for yourself.
yeah, that is why it is so popular in psychology and psychotherapy, like teaching people to say no, because many people have the struggle with it, because they're afraid of like what people will think of me if I say no. They will take it badly, or like.
Yeah, and aren't we projecting this experience, right? If we have some negative experience with no's, I think it's more likely now that we have discussed it that as women that potentially we do have a much more challenging experience with no's. And that then we kind of like project on others that a no coming from us will create that experience that we didn't like in others, right? And we're like, oh no to no.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. And even though it may not be like data verified, this concept, when I started engaging with it, it made sense to my system. So it felt accurate. So I didn't really care whether there was like the research data supporting it or not, because it actually felt accurate. That a no for a long time did feel like a no to me.
Mm,
Like any no registered as like potentially life and death.
mm,
Survival comes up with the word no.
Yeah, it does, because it activates your amygdala, and it does create this sense of danger.
But not the same for men. And of course, that's in a general sense, but it's not the same
Yeah,
path.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I understand it. Yeah,
So,
like that was a very, very interesting point in the conversation. Okay. So anything else, any other functions of a no that come to our mind?
well, the release and the relief that comes with a no when you claim back all the energy from the future pacing of the push, right? For you, to me, that's what it felt like. Just the reclaiming of that potential energy you're going to have to put out, right? In order to do this thing. And so it's the relief in the no.
Yeah. Somehow
But
now, Pauline, go
yeah.
ahead, sorry.
But it's a no that you have agency and choice about. So it's not a no that's being given to you. Like if you got a no from the university, it might have been a different experience. That was a no you were giving yourself. So that also that context changes how the nervous system interacts with a no. I just wanted to add that.
Yes, that is the good distinction. Although, like, I also must say that not all the no's that I was given in my life felt like this. So
Mm,
many no's that I had to say, they felt more like more creating more anxiety rather than the sense of liberation.
right.
Exactly because of that projection that Julie mentioned, that like I am projecting on how the other person would receive this no, and I'm a terrible person, that I'm
Mm.
like causing this pain.
Also future pacing and assuming rather than just staying with like what's true for me. What do I really truly want? Well, that's another aspect. What did you want to say?
I already forgot what I wanted to say, but something that's coming up is just curiosity about know with ourselves. Because what we mainly have been discussing is know with others, whether
Mm,
received or given.
mhm.
And it seems paradoxically that women also might be saying more no's to themselves, being having a lot of negative experiences with no and potentially more fear than men. And then at the same time, it is just like what is coming to mind based on my personal experience and just knowing women and having worked with women, that women are so good at saying no to themselves. Oh, they're so good. Maybe men are also good at that. But I don't have that much experience with that. But I wonder what the relationship is there. Like how
For
come
sure.
they
For sure.
they have kind of like on average low tolerance for no's and yet very good at tolerating no's imposed by themselves.
Wait, but they have a low tolerance for no's from women and in specific contexts. They don't have low tolerance in general. We're generalizing, but in terms of no's in the workforce, I don't think they have a low tolerance. I think they have a low tolerance of receiving no's from a woman about something they want or need.
Oh,
Men.
men? Okay.
Yeah. Because you said they have low tolerance to no's. I don't think that's true unless we're talking
No,
specifically the
no, no, no. I
context.
said I don't know how it is for men.
Ah, okay. Yeah, but that's true. But also, if we're gonna look back to just a little while ago when a woman's survival, at least in our society, meant you had to be really well, like marriageable material. Someone had to have wanted to marry you so that you can then have access to their bank account because you couldn't have your own credit card just a little while ago. Meaning, then you would have to really seem like a very easy, appeasable, pliable woman that someone will want to marry and make the wife. So that means you would have to say no to yourself in so many different ways. So then in a way, we are maybe more accustomed to no's, but the internal ones. So
Mm-hmm.
we have a high tolerance for the internal no,
Mm-hmm.
but the external no could potentially mean you're literally gonna die.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I want to propose a game, not for now, but as a bridge, because we are definitely are going to continue this conversation, because I'm going to get to the matter I want to discuss eventually.
Ira, maybe it's time to say no, huh?
No, 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 no,
Ira
no,
will
no,
not
because
take no for an answer.
because everything what has emerged in this conversation just convinced me even more of of the importance of like exploring other ways of saying no, like what there could be. But what I want to propose is that we continue thinking about what are all other possible functions of a no in life. And this is what we will start the game with when we continue this conversation in one of the following episodes. We will do brainstorming of all the possible functions of a no.
That we will need to prepare beforehand, you mean, that kind of brainstorm.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying.
Here's what I have put down. This is the function.
Keep thinking. Okay, so we need to close up. What are the most interesting, important things that you take from this conversation? Or if you want just to summarize for yourself what for you this conversation was about, you're also welcome to do that.
For me, this conversation helped to clarify that my entire life has been spent in the pursuit of finding the yes for myself. And so in that respect, I consider myself a successful person.
Bravo!
Wow, that's a milestone, Pauline. Congratulations.
It is a milestone. Yeah. Thank you. No small feat with all the no's. The amount of no's, the intensity of the no's, the relentlessness of the no's.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm taking with me for further exploration and for just being with it is the many things that are happening behind no's. Some history that goes back to whatever, possibly hunters and gatherers, some to my family, like my dad, and there are so many stories that I don't remember. And I'm just making space for these stories and acknowledging that they're legitimate. And from that point, engaging with no, how would that be? I wonder. It's like for receiving no, and also for giving no.
That is exactly what I want us to go to. To me, really, just energetically, what I felt when Yulia was telling her story about this bombardment of a no in what it's really like the effect it has on the nervous system was it's really sounds strange to call it a revelation, but I never really thought of that story from this perspective, and it really shifted something in my nervous system. So it was a very, very interesting experience, and in terms of that really opens up like the dimensions from which I could explore the relationships with a no. And what we have discussed about the differences of how women and men are wired in terms of receiving a no. Also just this idea that it could be just like we're energetically wired in different ways, not just that the society teaches us differently, but we are different energetic being, and it has a different impact on us. That also was a very impactful for me. So in general, I did feel like from time to time there were different threads that were opening up, like the new perspective on the topic that made it very rich and interesting for me. I really enjoyed this conversation, although it didn't go at all how I had planned. It never does.
But we did uncover lots of nuance for something that should be, conceptually seems so straightforward. It's actually so nuanced and so complicated, and complicated by what's the context, right? And which side of the no, and in what context of the no. Like, it's actually very nuanced, a very rich topic and reality that we live with on a daily basis, and yet we've objectified it into this like very concrete, small, kind of like almost as if it's like one thing for all of us. Object, subject, whatever you want to call it, object, subject. So like what we're doing is we're just starting to pull it apart, and that's really cool. I think that's important.
So it's really, really very interesting. So I want to invite our listeners also to share with us, what is your relationship with a no? What are your stories? How does your nervous system take it? And we will continue this conversation. The more will come. Meanwhile, thank you for flowing with us. Yes, Yula, please.
Thanks for listening. How was it for you? We believe that the more people experience group flow together, the better off we all are. More connected, more creative, more alive. So let's expand the field.
If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word. Share it with a friend, leave a comment, or give us a rating. We love you.
Do subscribe so you'll know when the next experiment comes out. You can also connect with us on our Life and Flow group Substack. We'd love to hear from you. Let's keep flowing together.